So, good evening, friends. Welcome to the webinar, which is based on the subject of health. And I hope your last few days were very healthy and also, very enjoyable. We are in a period of seclusion, we can say, because this is a time of introspection where God has given us some time of rest. We are at our homes and we are also, spending some time with the family. And so today also we are going to talk about some few interesting subject. But before we begin, let us pray together. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, friend beloved God, saints and sages of all religion, we bow before you all. Dear great masters, please help us to understand the teachings of ancient wisdom and give us strength and courage to apply these teachings in our daily life. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, friends, in last few webinars, we have been talking about this whole subject of health from different perspectives, especially from the perspective of yoga, and how yoga. We saw that in yoga we say that vitality, which is dependent on the energy of our body, the prana, and how much prana is going into us and how much we are receiving, and how this vitality translates into health. We saw different ways in which this vitality can be picked up, including receiving the vibrations. Just a second. So, but today we are going to talk, as we was talking that this subject of health we taken up from different perspectives, how we saw sunlight can help us, how exercises can help us, how breathing can help us, how upright posture can help us. And at the same time, we also saw that thoughts play a very important role, which was the subject of our last webinar, where we were understanding this subject of affirmations, and we saw that these thoughts, as Yogananda said, are actually not created in our mind, but they are universally rooted, and depending upon the energy of our mind, depending upon the focus and the state of our consciousness, we are tuning in and we are receiving the corresponding thoughts. If we are not in a proper frame of mind, if our energy is low, if our consciousness is of lower nature, then a lower quality thoughts, they keep start running into our minds, and as a result we start thinking that why these negative thoughts are again and again tormenting us. But we also saw that there is a technique which Yogananda gave us, that by raising the energy of our spine, and we saw that how this energy can be brought up into the upper chakras, especially in the anahat, and then bringing it up here. And if we focus deeply at this point, then we are able to tune in to the higher thoughts, which are always available to us, but just because our energy is low, we are not able to tune in to those higher thoughts. So today I'm going to talk about another subject, and this is regarding friends. And before I begin this subject, I would like to read something from Yogananda's book, and this subject is related with fasting. So before I go into this subject, let me just read a short paragraph that Yogananda has written, that fasting is a natural method of healing. When animals or savages are sick, they fast. The bodily machinery thus has an opportunity to cleanse itself and to obtain a much needed rest. Most diseases can be cured by judicious fasting. Unless one has a weak heart, regular short fasts have been recommended by the yogis as an excellent health measure. Now, with this background, most of us are now are we have no other opportunity, but we are just locked in our homes and we are staying at homes. And as a result, when we spend a lot of time at homes, there is a general tendency of the mind that it always starts thinking about the food, and we tend to sometimes eat more than what is required actually when we are sitting idle or when we are not doing anything productive. So I want to share with you, and this thing, when I read in from Yogananda's teachings, when he said that most diseases can be cured by judicious fasting. Now, friends, just if you think about that statement, it has a tremendous power. That as even as a medical doctor, I mean, uh, not many claims can be made that okay, most diseases can be cured by just this simple tool. But what this yogi is talking, and he this is something which is very powerful. And I would like to share with you one of the researches that came in recent times, which came about 2 years ago. And this scientist was from Japan, Dr. Yohinuri, who did his research on fasting. And he in fact got a Nobel Prize for that research for the subject of medicine. And in his research, he found that there are certain genetic switches in the cells of our body. And as we know that we have about 27 to 50 trillion cells in our body, and each of these cells are tiny living beings, you can say, those who eat and drink and sleep and divide. And just like these genetic switches which are there in these cells, these switches are for housekeeping. So we can say that there are different functions of a cell performed by different genes. You can say the blueprint is there, the programming is there in the genetic material. But there are certain housekeeping genes also which help, which translate into proteins and other components which help the cell to cleanse itself. Whatever is the daily waste material it is accumulating, it has to be disposed of so that cellular machinery keeps moving smoothly. Now imagine that we are living in a city where, let us say, there are thousands of homes, and these thousands of homes are every day creating a lot of garbage, and every day there is a garbage van, and there is a whole infrastructure of the city which picks up the garbage from different houses, and then it disposes it off. But just think, if let us say for 1 week or few days for that matter, this whole machinery is not working. Let us say there is no garbage collection happening for a week. What will happen to the city, or what will happen to our homes? It won't it be cluttered with the waste, and there will be a total chaos. And this is exactly what happens in our cells when we are not giving them enough time to rest, because then those genetic switches, they are not switched on. And it is the fasting which keeps this switches on, so that the garbage can be collected, this waste can be collected, and the cellular machinery can recharge itself. And it was this scientist, in fact, who also saw that when we do it periodically, maybe once in a week, or let's say once in 15 days, then there are certain cells. In fact, these are the immune cells, the leukocytes, the WBCs, they become more robust, they give us good immunity, they are able to clear the waste material much more easily. Our insulin sensitivity, if somebody is diabetic, even they can do fasting under medical supervision. And they saw that their insulin sensitivity becomes better, their sugars become controls become better. Even in mental illnesses now, it is being studied that people, those who have depression or even schizophrenia, people have studied many yoga modalities on these mentally ill people. And I was in one of the conferences where I was uh, where I was listening to the keynote speaker who was there, who was the director of Nimhans, and he was saying that these yogic tools can help us, even a mentally ill person, a schizophrenic also, to harmonize his brain waves and his brain functions. So, isn't this a very fascinating thing, friends, that as a yogi, as a sage, Yogananda was saying that yes, many of these illnesses you can cure. And he said cure, not even palliate, by doing judicious fasting. And he also suggested many simple ways to do fasting. It's not that you have to starve yourself. He suggested that maybe once in a week you can stay on fruits or fruit juices, or sometimes you can just stay one day on orange juice, or let's say almonds, or similarly on coconut water. There are different ways, and there are partial fasts. There are sometimes longer fasts also, like 3-day fasting and 9-day fasting, which should be done only under medical supervision if somebody has not done fasting earlier. But one of the simpler ways which I'm practicing these days and I'm finding very good is that please reduce your experiment with, and everybody is different, and if you want to experiment with this, which I found useful, is that your nighttime meal, if you can reduce it, or in fact just skip it after having breakfast and lunch, you can just have maybe a glass of milk if you're not milk intolerant, or just a small little cup of soup in the night, and keep your dinner absolutely light or bare minimum, and see what happens to your energy the next morning. Maybe your sleep will be better. Maybe you will feel early morning fresh, and maybe you will not find difficult to wake up early in the morning. So these things can actually happen, because what happens is that when our body goes into a rest mode in the night, our digestion also slows down. And in fact, having a heavy meal in the night time is one of the problems that we create for our system, and this is could be the root that he suggested, as Yogananda also suggested, that it could be a root cause of many illnesses, especially the upper respiratory tract infection, the sinusitis. And people, sometimes those who have sinusitis, those who produce a lot of mucus and phlegm, they should actually experiment with this more. And even otherwise also, if you take a very light meal in the night, or just skip it and take some soup or maybe a cup of milk, maybe some days, and see what happens, and then we can discuss it further. So with that thing for my side, I would just now request Dr. Aditya to share something with you.
Thank you, Amar. That was really nice and informative. So, friends, I'd like to just going slightly further on in what Amar was suggesting about fasting. Why don't we keep a small sheet of paper, and you can write down perhaps a few of those things that you'd like to do. Cut down a little bit on the dinner. Uh, this afternoon, somebody was also asking that we are all indoors right now. What can we eat to basically uplift our mood? Part of the answer is eat less or exercise more, or as Yogananda ji would say about fasting, in conjunction with that, he would say, go out in the sun. That could be your balcony, the terrace. Take a few deep breaths when you're in the sun. And Master would say oxygen and sunlight are more direct forms of energy. Of course, they don't replace food entirely, but remember, food is also nourished by those elements. So Yogananda ji said that a yogi should understand how much energy is coming through the food, how can they derive more through sunlight, oxygen, and fasting is what makes us sensitive in that direction. So I would encourage you to make a few notes of how you would like to introduce. And if you have any questions, please write to us. I would like to read a few stories, and maybe I can cover two today. And this is from the book Conversations with Yogananda, written by Swami Kriyananda ji, his disciple. And I want to read the first one and then share a little bit. We must strike a balance, the Master said, between non-attachment to outer things and sensible concern for our present realities. So long as a person is centered in body consciousness, he must take sensible care of his body. It is important spiritually also to take reasonable physical precautions. Proper diet, proper exercise, fresh air and sunlight. These things are necessary for a well-rounded existence. The Master once wrote to me, this is Kriyananda ji writing, keep exercised and body fit for God realization. He also scoffed, however, at excessive preoccupation with one's own health. Perhaps partly to encourage us not to be over-concerned over it, he would sometimes give us money for ice cream, a thing that health faddists would frown upon. Make God, not food, your religion, he said. Many faddists only weaken their systems by depending excessively on dietary principles. Oh, they'll cry. I didn't get my avocado today. My spine feels weak. That very preoccupation with secondary matters only weakens their willpower. I will read this line again, friend. That very preoccupation with secondary matters only weakens their willpower. Their very attitude toward life becomes spineless. Such concern for superficialities is like working to seal the cracks in a plaster wall when termites are eating away at the foundation. So again, as wonderful and as important as Master was saying over there, proper exercise, proper eating is, at the same time, he would say, don't make a religion out of it. And I think we don't have to emphasize that enough. As Amar was saying, experiment. Perhaps we are eating more than we need, or the wrong kind of food, or at the wrong time. So again, you have to make those little adjustments or conduct those small experiments. Don't think of drastic changes right away. Often what happens is the major drawback is it backfires. You go on a long fast and you say, okay, I'm going to clean up my body. Dr. Amar said the cleaning is not happening. And next thing, after you come out of the fast, you are ordering food online or eating over and above what you used to normally eat. So don't do small changes. See how your energy level is keeping up with that. Because remember, Yogananda ji is saying you want to strengthen your will through this. As the will is strengthened, he used to say, the stronger the will, the greater the will, the greater is the flow of energy. And so what you're doing is you're gently shifting the dependence on food into a dependence on willpower, on fasting, and seeing that, okay, I can derive more energy from other sources. And remember that phrase he said, those are of secondary importance, and we have to understand where primarily our energy is coming from. I want to read here. I have time, so I'll read all the three stories. So this is the second one. Saints often adopt extreme measures in their search for God, virtually starving themselves, for example, or going for long periods without sleep, or deliberately creating discomfort for their bodies. Many devotees wonder if it wouldn't help them to adopt similar practices, even if they are following the more moderate path of meditation and Kriya Yoga. With such aspirants in mind, the Master, who himself had undergone severe austerities during his youth, counseled people generally. He said, "It is best not to be fanatical in your search for God. Only those with some measure of realization can safely afford to risk their health and physical well-being in seeking Him. Without realization, such practices make one fanatical." One time, Henry, who had been reading the life of Saint Francis and was comparing the austerities of that great saint with the more moderate lifestyle that Master provided for us, asked him whether it wouldn't be a good thing for us to be more austere. The Master answered him, "When God gives more, take it. He knows what is right for you." Indeed, I have experienced that perhaps because the present age is less heavily burdened with physical deprivations than the days of Saint Francis, even our tests, however intense, tend to be more psychological in nature. And I wanted to focus on this last line, friends. Kriyananda ji is saying our tests these days in our ages for civilization as a whole tend to be more psychological. You may well be aware if you're going on the WHO website or just reading general news. Of course, right now, all energies are focusing, rightly so, on the pandemic that we are facing. But just till 2 months ago, the WHO website was carrying information on the psychological tests we are facing, the widespread, prevalence of depression, anxiety, and suicides, which are unfortunately continuing to rise. And you wonder, with more and more people, there are actually more overweight people on the planet right now than we ever had, according to statistics. So you wonder what is really our test. And as Kriyanandaji rightly so, and Master, he was quoting Master's words, he was saying, well, work on what is a test for you today. Why go back in history, pull out some pages, compare, as they say, those good old days, or those were the times, those were the saints. Like somebody once said to me, well, the saints should live off leaves. But I see you all are having fairly good amount of food. And I said, well, if it came to leaves, I hope we are able to live by the leaves. But if God has provided fair amount of food, yes, we shouldn't be overeating. But why create a trouble, like Master is saying, go out? On the other hand, fear, anxiety, fear of death, all these things are so prevalent right now. Through meditation, through Kriya Yoga, seemingly those moderate, simple practices, Master was saying, you can easily overcome those things. As the motto of Ananda is, joy is within you. The other day I was watching a video, or a friend was watching, and she told us this line she saw over there. Kriyanandaji was saying, if you are calm, how does it matter that difficult times come? You could eat, again, as he was saying, just what I was quoting right now. He said, you could eat leaves and be happy. Because calmness, why do we eat food? Because it makes us happy. Why do we stay away from even a little bit fasting? Because we are afraid it will make us unhappy. So again, it is the mind, it is the feelings, it is those somewhat unbiased fears which we have to overcome. So I encourage us all, as I remind myself, a little meditation will do me a lot of good. A little fasting can do me a lot of good. Simple experiments. The other day we were sharing, how do you raise your energy in these times when we are indoors? If you get even a little sun, and if you don't worry, you can do this just the same. Start walking in place. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, set a timer, and you will see. I've often found 1 minute of walking in place any time of the day when my energy is sinking, I suddenly say, this is so wonderful. One of the most simple exercises known to mankind is also one of the most profound in changing our consciousness and our energy. So taking that lesson, let's work on that psychological side of tests, Master is saying. And finally, this is a very humbling story for Dr. Amar and myself, and I want to share this. The medical doctors, the Master said, have discovered God's laws on a certain level of reality. Respect them for their knowledge. Don't ignore them. On the other hand, don't lean on them too heavily. If you continue using a crutch when you no longer need it, you'll never develop your own strength. One evening, he was deploring the fact that during his illness and subsequent seclusion, which happened towards the end of his life, people had taken to going to doctors every time anything went wrong with them. When I was more actively involved in things, he said, no one went to doctors. They depended more on God. Now that I have been out of things a little bit, I find them going all the time. Learn to rely more on God. He is ever within you, watching over you. What a beautiful, simple counsel again, friends. And as Master started, as Swami started in that story, and this goes back to Yoganandaji's Guru Sri Yukteswar and his Guru Lahari Mahashaya. They had deep respect for everybody. Doctors were part of that. Anytime some challenge would come, as they deemed it necessary, they would say, go to a doctor, seek this help, and so on, and as we normally would do. On the other hand, if we create a habit of it, or unfortunately, as was my experience years ago when I was in a practicing hospital, people very intelligent, people, they just think, oh, it is the doctor's job to fix my health. They have specialized in that front. I know nothing about it. I don't want to get too preoccupied about it. Just fix me up in the least possible time. And I would look at people and I say, what kind of a fix is that? We could do a surgery, but again, you will land up with this problem or that. And if it's not a physical problem, it will be a psychological problem. It may be a medical problem. The thing is that people are not applying, as Master said, their will. And God is within us, Master said, and He's watching over us. So let us see how we can again contact Him in meditation through exercise also. Energy, power is an aspect of God. Contact Him, feel Him. Once somebody asked Jyotish ji, our worldwide dharmacharya, that, sir, how will I know that I'm gaining energy and vitality or something is working for me? He said, well, every cell of your body will be vibrating with prana. It will be teeming. Your cells will tell you. And isn't that true? Sometimes we just make too much intellectual exercise of these things. How will I know I'm healthy? Well, you'll be feeling it. And by that sensitivity, if something is not right, you will catch it so much sooner. The need for food or the need to cut down on it, the need for exercise or the need to cut down on it, because let's accept it, the human nature is such, we go in swinging motions, in extremes. And that's what again Master is telling us over here, that as you go within, as you feel God's presence, as you take that responsibility. I like that word over here. Over there he said, when you've developed enough strength, why keep hanging on to that crutch? That yes, doctors are here, to help us overcome a challenge, a period of our life. We are going through some test and they bring us up. There is research, there is medicines, there are procedures. They put us back on track. But who has to walk on that track to reach the destination? Each of us, doctors themselves included. So let's keep the great doctor, God, in mind. From Him comes everything: physical healing, mental healing, emotional healing. And Yogananda ji used to say that we have to strengthen our willpower. His healing modalities were called divine will healing. You might say, in order to understand divine will, we have to develop our will to a certain degree. And in that process, again, yes, doctors help us, paramedical staff, nurses, parents, so many times when we fall ill, they bring us back on track. But let us not forget, friends, like Christ would say to people He would heal, go out and sin no more. And Yogananda ji explained that when He said sin no more, it was saying change your habits. Now take control of your life. I have intervened right now, but for next time you will have to put out at least half of the energy. And we have all these simply, beautifully, profoundly explained teachings of Yogananda ji's. Let's focus on them. So thank you, Amar, once again. That was very beautifully covered, that subject of fasting, which again can raise eyebrows or doubts or fears or thoughts in our mind. Imagine, modern science is going in the direction of simplicity. That's why the Nobel Prize just a couple years ago was given to this great doctor from Japan for his research on fasting. And let's become doctors. I have a joke, I often ask our team that why is every third doctor, I don't know, many years ago I was told this statistic, so I'm not sure if it's entirely right, but why are there so many doctors in America, let us say, who are of Indian origin? Very soon people learned the answer. The answer is because in India, everyone is a doctor. But no, jokes apart, it doesn't hurt to learn these principles, to apply them and to share them with everybody. So thank you very much for joining. If you have questions on any subject of health, please write it down. Amar and I will be very happy to cover it. And on our Friday evening class at the same time, 7 to 7:30, we are dedicating that half an hour exclusively to respiratory health. So we will talk about pranayams, things Master said, what research is saying, how can we breathe more deeply and heal and keep our lungs in a healthy state. Thank you. Thank you.